What's up, guys? Welcome to the Imperfect Swing Golf Podcast. Today we have the latest winner on the Ladies European Tour Access Series, Rachel. Can you maybe just give us a bit of background to who you are?
Hey, I am Rachel. I'm a professional golfer on LET Access, and I come over to play Sunshine Tour. Won 3 times on the LET Access and twice on the Santander Tour in Spain. That's pretty much me.
Um, you know, being a golfer is quite a internal journey with yourself, really, because you have to go through so many thought processes and stuff like that. What would you say is the toughest thing about being a golfer, especially where you find yourself right now?
Well, as a professional golfer, there's a lot of traveling involved, which is mentally quite tiring. But the toughest thing I think is that you're on your own on a golf course. If things are not going well, it's literally just you and the golf ball, and you have to try and figure it out in the 18 holes. Whereas I guess in some other sports you have like football, you have like a manager and physios and other teammates, but it's just so individual. I think for me that's the most difficult thing. You've got to have like, even for example, I'm currently in Sweden. My coach and stuff is back in England, so it's time differences and everything involved in trying to do well in your sport.
And do you think we often find ourselves watching, for instance, the PGA Tour, where they're traveling with like 5, 6 members of the team. They'll have for instance, I saw Brooks Koepka traveling with like a personal chef, and he has his trainer and whatever. Do you feel like that's hopefully where you would want to see the women's game getting to, that point where you guys are also able to have those luxuries, and obviously that comes with sponsors and more investment in the game? But do you think that's something that you think LET and LPGA will eventually get to?
I hope so. I mean, that would be amazing to have my own chef. um but I hope it does. I'm not sure whether it will be at that stage in the next couple of years. It might be a bit longer. But things are definitely a lot better than what they were 2, 3 years ago, since the LPGA and LET kind of like had a partnership. It has improved. There's more events over in Europe. Prize money's getting better. So I think it will. I mean, tennis, like for example, tennis, the women and men play for not the same prize money, but the women get quite a bit still. So that would be nice if golf went in that direction too. I think you just need, I think it's TV coverage as well, because the more it's on TV, the more sponsors will want to sponsor, because it's like worth their time. So hopefully we'll get that.
Yeah, and that's what I was about to say, is the broadcasting. I mean, that's why we watch the PGA Tour, because every week there's, even if it's the smaller, the Barbasol event, like we that's like the golf that's on, so we watch it. So it's not like you really have an option for much, really. You just kind of putting on, if you're a golf lover, you'll put on whatever golf is on. And I think we've seen that with the Scandinavian mixed and events like that, where there is an interest in the women's game, and people have taken to it lightly. They're not, the thought process is always that women's sports isn't really wanted, but then when you put them on TV, the numbers show differently. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting few years to see how sports media and broadcasting takes to the women's game.
Yeah, no, I agree. It just shows that people do want to watch it. It's never there for people to watch. And for example, last week in Spain, the Santander do a really good job of showing women's golf over there. It's like live on the sports channels, and we had TV cameras everywhere. People do want to watch it. It's just, it takes like a bold move, let's say from Sky Sports over here or something, to go out and film an event. So yeah, I don't know. We could be in Italy or something. But the co-sanctioned events with the guys, they've been really good to try and showcase what we can do, to try and get that interest. So yeah, I don't know. Hopefully, I think it'd be nice to have that much interest without having to have an event with the guys at the same time. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I was having a chat to another golf fan, and they were saying the same thing. It's almost like you still need the men for the women to get attention, which is kind of going against the initial like movement to get women to an equal playing field. Is like
Hmm.
you shouldn't have to still bring the men along for the show. You know, it should be on its own. But I
Hmm.
think in due time we'll hopefully get to that level where almost every LET event is at least broadcasted, because I think
Yeah.
for the men, every European tour event's broadcasted. So we obviously exposed to the European tour a lot, like over here in South Africa. But the ladies European tour, we maybe catch 4 or 5 events, excluding the majors, and those are like
Yeah.
on YouTube, or it'll be a very short amount of coverage. So it's getting there, I guess. Eventually, we'll hopefully get there.
Hmm. And I think there must be a way of doing it, because obviously everyone's going to watch the men's European tour every week, and
Mm,
people will still watch that. But I think whether the coverage can be in between the men's European tour, just having like a couple of hours every day of live coverage, that would be just a step in the right direction, from having 30 minutes the Monday after the tournament's finished, as highlights. Or a lot of people also aren't aware that it's on YouTube. Um,
mm.
when they put it on, they need to, I don't know, sometimes on the red button over here. But then you have to have that feature in the first place to be able to watch
Yeah,
it. So it's just not, it's on, but it's not always available to everybody to watch.
yeah. I think the movement is there, and I think I don't know if you did watch any of the SA Women's Open, because I think
Mhm.
LET did, or Sky had it broadcasted on YouTube on that side because it was on
Yeah.
Supersport here. But I think from that event we saw over here in SA, there is quite the demand for women's golf. It was one
Mhm.
event. Obviously the Sunshine Ladies was only 6 events, but I mean for
Mhm.
them, for the numbers we got, I don't know the exact numbers, but it was rivaling the men's in a sense. So it was quite encouraging to see that
Wow.
local golf actually pulling some numbers, especially against the Sunshine Men's Tour. So yeah.
That's amazing. I did watch it actually, because obviously I normally play that event without the
Yeah.
COVID restrictions. And I was like, oh, and it's weird knowing the course and not playing. So it was good to watch. It looked like it played a lot different this year to previous
Mm,
years, I think a bit longer.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, it was on YouTube, and that's good that over there the interest was really good. Um, I think also there wasn't many other events going on at the time
Mm.
over here, so that's probably why it was shown. But we need more of that, I think.
And now that you've just picked up your third win, um, did you see this coming? There's often this, like if you look, for instance, golfers will go um, with a couple off weeks, and then all of a sudden they win. Was that the same with you? Did you kind of feel the momentum shifting in your game, or did it just kind of happen on the final day? Because you were chasing on the final day as well.
I was. I wouldn't say I've seen it coming. Like my form has been okay, but I've been unhappy with the way I was hitting the ball. And but I went to a course that I came second at last time I played it. So I really like that golf course. So I kind of had good vibes in the practice round. I thought, well, yeah, I can do okay here. And then when I got off to a good first round, that kind of like settled me in. I thought, right, okay, I've got something going. I played Italy the week before with like a co-sanctioned event with the guys. Um, and I kind of found something like practicing after that, and I took that into Spain, and it kind of worked. And the final day, I kind of forgot about my swing and everything because I was 5 back with 9 to play,
Mm.
and Nina wasn't making any mistakes. So I knew if I could just try and make some birdies and put the pressure on, which is what I did, and I ended up winning, which is after a 7-hole playoff, which was amazing.
I think you could have just told everyone that you like the golf course instead of playing an extra 7 holes, eh?
Yeah, I know. I know. I was delighted to be in a playoff after being 5 back, but
Yeah.
7 holes was a lot. I was getting pretty tired, say, after like the fourth one.
And with a playoff, take us through the mindset of firstly, like you mentioned, you were five back with nine to play, then you get into the playoff. What's the thought process going through your mind? Was it more like, oh, okay, this is I didn't expect to actually catch Nina, but yeah, I am, or was it kind of like I need a win? Was there any just slight I don't want to say like you took it easy or took it for granted, but did you were you like zoned in 100% of the time, or did you just think, okay, this is at least a good finish,
Um, well, I was very grateful to be in the playoff, but I wouldn't, especially after playing seven holes. You never don't want to win.
Yeah,
I definitely wanted to win, and I did feel like I needed a win, because I want to get my top six on access. So I kind of thought it's really important that I won. Um, so I was never zoned out. Every shot to me was very important in that playoff. Even as so much as like the coin toss, like you have to see who goes first. We were kind of both didn't want to say who could nominate heads or tails on the coin.
yeah.
But eventually she gave in. She's like, oh, okay, you can pick Rachel. I was like, okay, heads. And then I won the coin to play toss, which was like a win in my head. I was like, oh, great. So yeah, I definitely wanted to win. And I kind of needed to, for sure.
And you mentioned, trying to get the top six on the axis. Where would you
Hmm.
say in your golf journey, like where are you right now? Um, you've won multiple times. Where would you assess your career right now?
Obviously, I'd love to have my full LET card. I feel like I'm close though. I've the last few, not obviously not last year because we only had five tournaments, but the last couple of main seasons, I've been really close of getting the top five in the order of merit. Um, but I feel like I could definitely be on the next stage, which is my goal. Um, but I mean, I've played the British Open, so I've played like majors, and I've played a lot of LET events anyway. Um, so obviously, I just want to make the leap into the next stage, and I think I can do that currently with my game.
And you mentioned, the next stage would be, full card on the LET. There's often this conversation that goes on where, you'll have someone who does well on the feeder tour, and then, when they get their few starts on the main tour from, the progress they make on the feeder tour, they don't do as well. Why do you think that is? Is it just the change of environment, because you're not only playing the LET, but like we just talked about before we started recording, you don't want your focus to shift? Do you think it's all about like that little bit of a loss of focus when you're playing on both tours?
Hmm. I think it's been something I've been working on with my psychologist. I think once you play and you do well, say on LET access and you have wins, you kind of become comfortable in that environment and you know
Mm,
everybody every week. But once you go up a level onto the next stage, you don't really know that. You know people, but you don't know them as well as what you know the other players. And you kind of, well, for me anyway, it's kind of like you have a point to prove. Like you want to prove that you can do well there too. Like, so for me, I've been trying to work on keeping everything the same. Like no matter what the tournament is, treat it the same each week. Um, and hopefully that will work. But I think obviously you've got the added pressure. You've had such a good season
mm.
before. You want to continue that over. Um, so and also you've got sponsors who are wanting you to do well over there, and it's just I guess it's just a different environment, and everyone adapts to it in a different way.
Yeah, it's even you also see it quite often with the elite amateur scene. Someone will be number one in England, or for instance like number one here in South Africa. That shift to professional golf and well, essentially to the next level is always so uneasy, because like you mentioned, there is that comfortable factor where you are doing well on that scene. Everyone, like you mentioned, and now you're kind of in this new environment where you've got to adjust very quickly, and you don't really have much time either.
Hmm. That's true, and like I said earlier, like you're on your own as well.
Yeah.
And golf can be if you don't know anyone, you're traveling by yourself, and you've gone from traveling with others to by yourself. And um it is, and we're not like the men where we can take a team away with us. You know, you don't have your coach and your physio, and
Mm,
it's just, and I think the shift from amateur into professional golf is very different, because with amateur golf, you're either with your national team or with parents, or and then you go to traveling to a country by yourself without anyone, and you've got to learn how to book hotel rooms, flights, practice rounds, get yourself to the golf course every day. It's just so different, and then you're in a different country every week. It's so different to playing amateur stuff as well. I think obviously the leap between LAT Access and LAT is a lot smaller than that, because you obviously
yeah.
do that already. It's just, it's getting used to the bigger stage, I think.
And I mean, I remember the first podcast we recorded. I think it was mid last year. And well, actually, this time last year, we had a chat about the costing of being a female professional golfer, and essentially that the money isn't great, to begin with.
No.
So what
Mm-hmm.
you find yourself now, you started crowdfunding. Um, how has that process been? Has it been what you expected? Are you, I don't want to say disappointed, or where do you find yourself in this journey? Because putting yourself out there, stating the fact that you're in need of funding is quite a vulnerable
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, I was thinking about it for a while, but I was never really bold enough to like press,
Hmm.
share on social media. Um, because it's obviously not something anyone wants to admit that they need help, but like to be able to play, to be able to do your job. Um, so it's kind of a relief when I did it. I was like, right, it's out there, it's done. Kind of close my eyes and just hope it goes okay. Um, but it's gone okay, because from that, like for example, in other ways, people have said, on the side, okay, we'll help you with this,
Hmm.
and they've just, and so yeah, I set up a GoFundMe, and it's kind of like made awareness, and I think it has helped quite a lot. Um, and then obviously, I went on to win, which was nice. So it kind of took a little bit of pressure off, I think, with just a little bit of help from others. So anyone thinking about it, I'd say definitely do it. Um, and if it doesn't completely work out, then at least you've tried. Was what was going to, which is what I thought. Um, but just golf is so expensive that you can't do it without sponsors. You do need people to help you, unless you play LPGA or you're in the men's game. Um, the price, if you unless you win every week, you definitely need some form of help from somebody. Especially during COVID times, you've got to take testing, you've got to stay in official hotels and bubbles, and you can only eat in certain places. It's a lot more expensive than it was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I think even when earlier this year we were in Cape Town for the Investec SA Women's Open, it was like you basically told where to stay. They give you options, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not like it's the most affordable either, because within those places there needs to be certain guidelines that they can enforce and whatnot. So I think yeah, COVID has definitely placed a lot of strain on athletes, because well, especially in the golf scene, because you
Yeah.
basically you paying for two people with a caddy, and in your case you can't even have a caddy because it would make it, I mean, you wouldn't even be able to pay the caddy. So it's quite
Mm-hmm.
a scary thing, and I think people don't really know that, for instance, sometimes you guys don't take caddies because it's
Mm-hmm.
such a given on the men's tour, because you're always watching European and PGA. But for instance, like when the ladies came for the SA Women's, and it's shown on TV, and they're seeing the ladies pull their carts, and they're thinking,
Yeah.
what, did they not get the memo, or what's happening here? But yeah, it's quite it's quite shocking that that is the case, that you guys can't honestly afford to bring a caddy along.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just too expensive, because you're having to pay for an extra person, and then 10% of a winning or whatever the deal is with the caddy. We just can't afford that. So we do just pull our own trolleys, even on the hilliest of courses or in the rain. For example, in my playoff last week, 7 holes, I was just pulling my own bag. So even sometimes we can't, like, you get offered electric trolleys, but it's just pull trolleys are free, so we would go for the pull
Yeah.
trolley option, the cheapest option possible. Maybe one day it'll change and we'll all have caddies. That would be nice. But yeah, it's just not an option really for us. Definitely not in Europe. LPGA is different. They're playing for a lot more money. But yeah, definitely not even on the ladies European tour. It's a rare occasion that you see someone with a caddy. Quite often it's a family member who's like taking a week's
Mm.
holiday to come and help, or a boyfriend or something. Someone else has come, but we'd never pay for someone to come out and caddy. Not at this moment in time, anyway.
Do you think that also adds to that, that earlier conversation of smaller events, bigger events? Because on the bigger events, you forced to take a caddy. For instance, on the LPGA, I'm
Yeah.
sure it's mandatory to take a caddy. And then,
Hmm.
having to deal with someone that, for instance, you haven't had a chance to build that initial week to week
Yeah.
relationship with. So it's almost like you're on the back foot from, versus the main. Or for instance, when you play in the in the Open, in the British Open, when you played in the Open, you were forced to take a caddy. So obviously, you haven't had a chance to foster that relationship like the men or the ladies over in the US. So do you think that also adds to that, factor of performing on the bigger stage?
Yeah, when I played the Open, I qualified, and I was like, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna have a caddy. And I didn't really know who to ask, and I just got a family friend in the end to come and carry my bag, and he was really excited. He was like, oh my God, I'm caddying the Open. But yeah, it's not someone that, quite often it's, you don't know the person and they don't know nothing about your game.
Yeah,
And a caddy kind of needs to know what to say at the right time for that person, because everyone's different, of course.
exactly.
Um, and that's something that you can only do over time. So quite often, a caddy for us, if it was mandatory, would just literally be a bag carrier, and we would still make a lot of the decisions ourselves with clubbing and everything else. I think the on the LET they had a co-sanctioned event in Sweden with the guys,
Yes.
and it was mandatory to have a caddy. So I know a few of the players that I know were like, "Oh, who are we going to get to caddy?" Like, because a lot of people brought over family members, but with restrictions in the UK, especially, it wasn't possible because you'd have to quarantine when you came home, and they have jobs to go to. So you had a couple of people that were struggled to find people, and it's just, if you're not used to the person, for me, I'd be more nervous because I
Yeah.
feel like I want to point to prove to that person that I'm not bad at golf if I played badly or something. Um, so yeah, mentally, it's something that you have to get used to.
And you mentioned having to prove something to, for instance, the caddy. But what are for you personally? What's your biggest motivating factor? Like, is there something that you zone in? Like, for instance, when you found out you were playing the playoff, was there something that you looked to that gave you that extra bit of motivation? Coming down the stretch.
Um, Not in particular. I mean, I birdied the last to get in the playoffs. So I kind of use that to say, right, okay, you can do this, because we were going to play that hole again. But for me, it's just more, I've played really well today. Just keep it going, kind of thing. Um, and when I'm in like match play or a playoff situation, I kind of like I become like more aggressive for my shots, and I kind of think about nothing else other than trying to win that hole or do it in the least amount of shots than the other player. Whereas in stroke play, it's not quite the same mentality. Um, so I think it brings out a better side in me. So I quite enjoy it. Um, but yeah, not really apart from that. And other than that, I really like the golf course, so I was quite confident anyway. That would be the only things.
And you mentioned sponsors and dealing with sponsors. From your personal experience, maybe tell us about your current sponsor, your clothing sponsor, and then also what advice do you have for athletes, whether they be golfers or non-golfers, but any athletes looking to engage and possibly pick up sponsors? What are some of the key factors that, from your personal experience, that they're looking for, that people need to possibly work on?
So yeah, my clothing company, Alan Green, they give me clothes, which I'm really grateful for. For them, it's really just social media. Like the more you can promote them on social media, that's what they kind of get out helping you. So the more followers you have on like Instagram or Twitter, that's like a big thing for sponsors that they look for. If you had like two players and one player had 40,000 followers on Instagram and the other had two or three, they'd probably sponsor the 40,000, regardless of how good they are at golf. And that's just the way it is for the women's game. Like, and you could also like golf. My golf club have been really supportive of me, and they've helped quite a bit. So you could also golf clubs see if you've grown up, especially if you've played there all your life, you've grown up and you've come through, and I'm sure they'd be more than happy to support you. But and I don't know, like some people have management companies, but they've got to have the right contacts, and whether it's worth it for you, I think is something that you could look at. A lot of management companies do different deals where if they get you a sponsor, they take like a certain percentage of your winnings, or they just get a certain percentage of the sponsorship, which is fine because you wouldn't have the sponsor without them in the first place.
Yeah.
But some management companies you have to pay for from the first go off, whether you get anything from them at all. So it's tricky, especially in the women's game. But I'd say social media is the biggest thing, because obviously we're not on TV as much, so that for them is the next thing that they can promote their company with.
Yeah, I've noticed, in the women's game, that the sponsorships are few and far between. You get your golfers who are either really good and they're winning often, but they don't have a social media presence. But because they are winning often, they are in the news quite often, so they get the sponsorships there. And then you'll have the golfers who aren't performing well, but they have good social media, and they'll have all the gear. So it's so much more difficult. And even because I provide some images for some of the players, like this is their only way of keeping sponsors, is just to keep them happy on social media. So yeah, it's unfortunate, and especially because I work in the men's game as well, and you see they really don't even care about social media, but they've got a full bag of clubs sponsored by Titleist or TaylorMade or whoever, but they still have that full sponsorship, but they don't give the same output that women are forced to. So it's quite worrying that companies still see it from that point of view, and that they haven't invested in the women's game. Because if you have golfers who aren't doing anything, what's holding you back from doing the same in the women's game? So it's quite puzzling at times from
Yeah.
someone who's involved in the industry, really.
Yeah, like for me, for example, after I played last week, there was a load of like young kids watching, and one boy asked for a golf ball. I was like, "Oh yeah, sure, I'll take my golf ball." And then all of a sudden, loads of kids came up asking for golf balls. I was like, "Oh no, I've only got like 6 in my golf bag," so I gave them like all away. And then I pay for my own golf balls. I don't get them for free for Titleist. So I was like, "Oh no, what am I gonna do? I've got 5 more tournaments." So I played a practice round for the last 2 days with one golf ball in my bag because I didn't have any more on me at the time.
Oh
Because
geez.
obviously golf balls are expensive.
Yeah. No, man. That's like, you're probably the first winner that doesn't have any golf balls in their bag the week after. Okay. No, we'll tag Titleist UK on this, and they better give you a couple dozen at
That would be
least.
amazing.
Oh geez. I actually didn't think about that one. Like, oh no, I gave too many souvenirs to kids. I don't have golf balls to
Yeah.
play with. Oh my word.
And then I was a bit like, oh, I couldn't say no, obviously. And I feel bad if one little kid didn't get a golf ball or something.
Yeah.
So I was like, I did have to say no in the end. I was like, I've got no more balls. Let's be out.
Oh geez. All
Yeah.
right. And Okay, that's hilarious. I think luckily they didn't ask you for like golf caps and stuff because I'm sure you don't have many of those on hand either.
I have one, the one in my head.
Like playing
So
the
yeah, they
next the
definitely
next
couldn't have
five
that.
tournaments and your face is completely sunburned. You're like, oh no,
The
it's
tan
because of
will
that
even
one
out
kid.
anyway. Yeah.
Oh my word. But Rach, there's been a lot of talk about the Olympics, and the golfers involved in the Olympics. There's been a lot of withdrawals and people
Mhm.
with valid excuses, or not excuses, but valid reasons for withdrawals, such as COVID being a concern, and the women's, especially in the women's game, because it's placed so awkwardly in between majors and big events.
Yeah.
What's your take on the way golf and the Olympics has played out in the past few, well, months, really, the way people have kind of had their reactions to it.
Yeah, I think especially with the women's side, we had the major last week at Evian, and I know I heard of a couple of players that if they played Evian, they wouldn't be able to get home and travel to the Olympics because of the restrictions of COVID. So they had a decision to make, and I know one of the girls didn't play Evian and has decided to go Olympics, but a lot of people have decided to play the majors and not play the
Mm,
Olympics. I mean, obviously, for a lot of sports, Olympics is like the pinnacle of the sport. Like that's what you train for 4 years to be able to do that. With golf, um, obviously, it's only been recently added, and it's obviously be amazing to represent your country at the Olympics in any other year without COVID. Um, but it's not. I don't think for a lot of people it's like the main thing of their season. You'll look towards the Open or for the men the Masters, and I think for them that's bigger tournaments. Um, so I just don't. Unfortunately, not yet. It's not as big as what it should be in the Olympics because obviously we worked hard for golf to be an Olympic sport in the first place.
mm,
Um, so I think I don't know. I think some guys and women for them that, and obviously we're individuals anyway. Their individual career. Well, it's a hard decision to make. I think any other year without COVID, everyone would be so excited about the Olympics. It's just difficult with restrictions this year.
do you think the Olympics has to fight for its place in, like you mentioned, it's not a priority for everyone as yet because,
Mm.
like you mentioned, this is only the second time in recent years. Do you think it has to now basically fight for a position in the schedule, really? Because even the first Olympics didn't really get the main golfers going over. You had the likes of Rory and other players that weren't really keen on traveling to Brazil. So it's almost like it has to now fight for a position. But do you think that it should get to a point where it's almost like compulsory to represent your country, or do you think it should always be the choice of your personal choice?
I think it should always be a personal choice, but I think, well, for me anyway, it'd be an honor to represent Great Britain or England in anything. And kind of through amateur stuff, you do that. You represent your country in like world championships, European championships. Um, and I think so. I think a player should think about that anyway. Like I've come this far through my country. Like it's one of the reasons why you're here playing golf. Um, and obviously, sometimes players get to a point where they kind of forget that because golf is so individual. And
Yeah.
I don't think it should be compulsory, but I think it should be done that you still represent your country. And obviously, with COVID, it's different. Like that's a hard decision to make. But if any other normal year, I think players, you should be happy to represent your country.
Yeah, I think once it holds value in, and I think that will only happen after a few runs where a few good memories are made playing that event and it
Mm.
kind of gets that hype. I think then we'll probably see the top players not turning it down. Obviously, with COVID, it does place uncertainty in many factors, but I think even from what we saw in Brazil, it did show that it wasn't a priority, and also the locations. I suppose I think does also, play a role in these decisions. But um, just a quick question before, we were talking about how you are kind of on your own in playing golf. Has COVID, in a sense, now that you have travel buddies, has that been at least a positive of COVID? Like you obviously share a lot of time with someone you choose to share time with. So, who's your bubble buddy? And, has that relationship also just kept you kind of calm during this crazy, crazy period?
Yeah, we're lucky to be able to have a bubble. So I've been sharing with a Scottish girl called Gabrielle MacDonald. Um, and recently, I think 2, 3 weeks ago, we were allowed to stay in Airbnbs, only Airbnbs or the official hotel. So we're allowed to another player. So I'm staying with, there's three of us this week. Another Scottish player called Kimberly Beveridge. So yeah, you've got to pick who you share with wisely, because you can't really change who you share with. You're with that person for example, we're away for 6 weeks. 6 weeks is a long time
Yeah.
with a couple, 2, 3 people. So you have got to pick them wisely, but luckily I shared with them both before and we get on really well. So I'm lucky. I don't know if everyone is so lucky, but I guess I am. Because you have to eat with them, meet them at airports, stay with them. You can't, yeah, you can't venture anywhere. Like you can't, you're stuck in your Airbnb or hotel room if you're not at the golf course. So you're gonna have similar interests, I guess, for Netflix and all that sort of thing. Um, so it's fine. You do get used to it. For me now, this is like the normal.
Mm.
I want it since it's been relaxed Airbnbs. It's like, oh, it's exciting. Get to do something else. But yeah, no. To be honest, it's fine. It's fine in the bubble. So yeah, I
And
don't
I
mind.
and I actually have a point here for your Netflix recommendation. So that would be nice to hear what the three of you have been binging with all the time you guys have on your hands.
So we finished yesterday's Sweet Tooth. It came
Okay.
out recently on Netflix. That was really good. We really enjoyed that. I've already been Googling when season 2 comes out. Um, what else have we been watching? Started Lupin.
Oh yeah.
So we started that. That's really good. I'd recommend that one. And then we've had the Olympics on in the background, the highlights. So we've been watching that a bit.
And favorite activity at the Olympics. There's so many. I know here we have literally, I think, 10 channels dedicated to the Olympics. So it's quite a variety of things that you wouldn't normally watch, but because it's the Olympics,
Mhm.
you just find yourself watching it. So what have you guys been watching?
I really like the swimming because I used to swim in competitions when I was little. So I really like that one. Swimming, like running, anything. We'll watch anything, absolutely anything. We've even watched like gymnastics. Obviously, the golf starts soon, but yeah, definitely swimming is the main one for me, just because I can relate to it a little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And with the golf, you mentioned starting tomorrow. What's your predictions, men and women? Who do you think um, will be wearing the medals come Sunday?
Ooh, that's a tough one. It'd be nice to say Great Britain. Tommy Fleetwood, hopefully for the men. That would be mine. Women's side, Nelly Corder is playing, I think. So she's been playing really well, obviously.
Yeah.
So her, I think, them too.
And to close off on Rach, what social media platforms are you on, and what are your handles? I'll obviously link them below, but
Uh,
just for the people out there.
Instagram is just my name, Rachel Goodall. Twitter is Rachie Golfer. No, they're my two main ones, to be honest.
No Facebook.
I do. It's just my name, Rachel Goodall.
Okay.
I'm not as
Uh,
active on. I do use it, but it's not my main one.
but yeah, thanks, Rach. Hopefully, between now and the time the Premier League starts off, you'll shift your support to Man United. We've had a few good
No way.
signings. Um,
No
so
way.
yeah.
You're gonna need a lot of good signings to beat us. So
Okay. Okay, Miss Liverpool. With that being said, I hope it never rains so you don't have to use your Liverpool umbrella that you have in your bag. And until then, let's get Titleist to send you some golf balls.
That would be amazing.
Thanks, Rach.
Thank you.